Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to a special edition, a social distancing edition of Broncos Country Tonight. Of course, Ryan Edwards, Benjamin Allbright, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Ben, how are you doing back at your house? Because, again, this is what we're doing right now. This is the new normal we live in.
Yes, everything is good here at the Bat Cave. I'm staying appropriately socially distanced. I didn't want my computer to come into contact with your computer and catch the computer coronavirus, so I think we're good here.
Do you really call your house the Bat Cave?
No comment.
Okay, let's go ahead and start off with some overall impressions of free agency. This is the first TV show we've had a chance to do since free agency happened. What did you think about what the Broncos were able to do?
I thought it addressed key specific needs. It wasn't really one of those ostentatious, we're just going to shotgun money at every free agency. It looked like they had a plan. They went out there and addressed along the defensive line. They didn't get the free agent that they wanted, but in missing on that, they actually wound up, I think, in a better position with the trade that they got for Jarrell Casey. They went out and they traded for a corner and AJ Bouye to fill the Chris Harris hole. On top of getting Graham Glasgow, which addressed an offensive line need, and Melvin Gordon, which I thought was a luxury, but, hey, everybody seems to enjoy it. I think that the way and the strategy that they went about doing this, I think, was pretty good. And I think that, we have a team that we were optimistic about at the end of last season. I don't see any reason not to have that optimism going forward.
It feels like the Broncos, something that's been really big, especially with Vic Fangio, is about adding versatile players, right? So Jarrell Casey is a great example of that. Graham Glasgow is another example of a versatile kind of player. So in your opinion, which position group improved the most so far in free agency?
Right. I would probably say the defensive line, except you have to factor in the fact you're losing Shelby and Wolf, and that stings. But getting Mike Purcell tendered and then trading for Jarrell Casey, who is a 5 straight Pro Bowls, is a leader, a workhorse on the field, and everybody I talked to down in Tennessee was very sad to see him go. And that's usually how you can tell the impact that a player has. Their fan base and their front office and their coaches and their players are upset that player got moved on from. That player is probably pretty integral to what they do. So I think I'd have to answer that defensive line, although I think Glasgow might be the stellar addition, if you will, on the offensive line.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you on that ultimately. And yeah, I mean, for Jarrell Casey to get him for a 7th round, as you mentioned, John Elway, as we're going to hear later on in the show, he even talks about it as a bit of a steal. I think almost everybody generally framed it that way. Okay, let's shift over to the Broncos starting quarterback. Now, it's come to my attention after doing the show with you over the course of this week and talking about some of the free agent potentials. And of course, they added Jeff Driscoll, but other free agent potentials at quarterback. For some reason, you're really dug in on the idea that the Broncos don't need competition at quarterback when you basically browbeat me on that for like 6 straight months. Hey, listen, open competition makes everybody better. And I was the one saying, nope, you should go all in on one guy. You should give the confidence to the team with one guy. It's come to my attention that you're backing off of that, and I'm not really sure why you're waffling so much.
Well, you pivoted positions to the other direction, and all of a sudden I happen to see the light of day. It's too bad you didn't stick with your guns, Ryan. You would have been right the entire time. It's better to be right in the end than to have been right and change off that.
No. Trust me, I'm great with my position on this. I hate open competitions in training camp. It's just we got into our discussion about whether or not the Broncos should consider, as a backup, a reclamation project of Jameis Winston or maybe even Cam Newton. Now, you don't want either one of those. I contend that even Jameis Winston at maybe a $7 million one-year deal, kind of like Teddy Bridgewater did with New Orleans Saints, makes a ton of sense. But for whatever reason, you've kind of maintained, nope, they need to go all in on Drew Lock. And if he doesn't work this year, then you can start thinking about things next year.
Well, first of all, the idea that Jameis Winston's going to sign a 7-year deal is ludicrous. You're off by about $22 million there. The I don't want the Broncos to spend that money on that. They can spend that money on other things. I think they should be all in on Drew Lock. And yes, you want somebody in there you feel like is a capable veteran if he were to get hurt. However, I am not going to go out there and do another stopgap veteran reclamation guy, another Flacco, another Case Keenum, Mark Sanchez. We don't need another one of those. They're all in on Drew Lock. And if it works out, then great. And if it doesn't work out, then you didn't get a guy who kept you in mediocrity. You're going to be drafting so low. You're going to be right there in the thick of things for maybe a Trevor Lawrence if the thing blows up in your face. So I would rather be at those two scenario points than someone who has, for instance, an Andy Dalton on their roster that's always going to be picking between 12 and 18. They're not making the playoffs. They're never in line to go get the quarterback that they want to go get. And it's what we like to call quarterback purgatory. And that's the worst place to be.
Now, it's interesting, by the way, the quarterbacks you listed all past their prime, not starting caliber quarterbacks, where I still view Jameis Winston, and some people around the league probably view Cam Newton as a starting caliber quarterback, but I digress. Let's move on here, since this is obviously something that we'll need a much longer segment to be able to.
Can't spell INT without Winston.
You had to get a bad pun in there. Okay, so the Broncos, amazingly, before Drew Lock took over, they were last in the division. When Drew Lock took over, they finished second at the end of the year, second in the AFC West. So, Ben, as we take just a quick glance at what the rest of the teams did in the AFC West, and really the Chiefs are the only one that didn't do very much at all. Raiders made a lot of moves. Chargers made a couple, but their quarterback situation is a little bit in flux until we know the draft. How do the Broncos stack up right now?
I think they stack up pretty well. You talk about a team that was close to 500. You talk about a team that had 4 or 5, 6 games that could have gone either way. And they came out on the losing end of those quite a bit, just bad luck. You look at the Chargers situation, I'm not sure they're better. Certainly the quarterback position is a gigantic question mark there. And the Raiders always had a bunch of people. And I've got to commend the Raiders on their commitment to social distancing. They've been distancing themselves from the playoffs for a decade now.
All right, you show up for the looks, the Bat Cave, and of course you leave with some bad puns. When we come back, Steve Atwater is going to join our program. We'll talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. Don't go anywhere. It's Broncos Country Tonight.
Stay tuned. There's more Broncos Country Tonight ahead, right here on KTVD Channel 20. Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Joining us now, Steve Atwater in our special edition of the program, the social distancing edition. Steve, good evening. How are you?
What's up, R. Edwards? How are you?
I'm doing just fine, as you can see by my properly lit living room that I've worked really hard on. Hey, listen, Steve, I don't know. We had a chance to hear from John Elway. Great interview with Alexis Perry. He's going to join us in the next segment. And he talked a little bit about the key free agency additions, including A.J. Bouye, Graham Glasgow, and Jarrell Casey. Here's what he had to say.
You know, it was a good start for us this offseason, you know, with A.J. Bouye trading for him at the corner position, and then Jarrell Casey trading for him at the defensive tackle position that we needed, and still a very, very good football player, a 5-time Pro Bowler. And so for us to be able to trade a 7th-round pick for him, you know, we felt very fortunate. You know, we get Graham Glasgow, you know, inside, and so you know, the guard center that from Detroit that has had a tremendous career so far, and we look forward to him to continuing that here. So it's been a real good start for us. We're excited about where we are. Obviously, we have a long way to go, and we still have to win some football games. But, you know, we feel like we've gotten better as a football team.
Okay, so, Steve, let's start on the defensive side of the ball. How much better do you think the Broncos got on the defense with the additions of Jarrell Casey and A.J. Bouye?
Well, I think that they're going to be great additions to the team. Now, Chris Harris Jr. wasn't a bad player, so to say that it's going to be a big upgrade from Chris Harris to A.J. Bouye, I don't know if that would be the case, but I do think A.J. is going to come in here and play well. Jarrell Casey, he's a 5-time Pro Bowler, so you know that he has some skills. He's going to be great on that defensive line, but we haven't signed some of the key guys who've been quite productive for us in the last few years. Derek Wolfe and Shelby Harris. Gotsis hadn't been as productive, but you know, those are some guys who we relied on for some strength and consistency, and those guys won't be in the building. So Jarrell Casey is going to have a pretty big, heavy load to carry, but I think he'll do well. We got some really good young guys on the team who I think will look up to Jarrell Casey. He'll be able to mentor them, and get them to where they need to be. So I think we'll be good. And I have a ton of confidence in the coaches and the personnel staff that they have the right people on the team.
Yeah, Ben, that becomes kind of an interesting question, though, about the depth of this team. Like what, especially on the defensive side of the ball, are we looking more now to the draft and developmental players, or is there still maybe some room to add vets? And specifically, what positions would you still want to see vets?
I think it's both. I think, I think the Broncos are going to draft and continue to develop. I think they're going to try to restock the team with youth. I mean, that makes sense. That's what you have to do. And I think we're going to see that in specific positions along that secondary too, where you have some veterans that you need to get a little younger at. I think that the defensive line, while we are all sad at the loss of Shelby, Derek, Adam, and all that kind of stuff, it may have gotten better in addition by subtraction. You got some great bodies in there. Casey, we're going to get to see what Draymond Jones can do. We got one more season to maybe see if DeMarcus Walker gets it all turned around like we kind of sort of saw him do a little bit last year. I'm excited about those things. I don't know if there's necessarily room for a whole lot of more veterans to be added, but I would suspect if they do, it would be in that secondary.
I mean, Steve, and I'll ask you kind of the same question. Oftentimes we frame these things as you'd like to basically buy your defense. In this case, it's a good opportunity to stock it full of vets. You probably want to draft defensive line. You want to draft cornerback. We've talked to Vic Fangio about these things ad nauseum. But in the end, it does feel like for me that a defensive back, more specifically a cornerback, could still be added another vet. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking that same thing. And I know a lot of people have spoken about Prince Amukamara. We've talked about it several times that I think he would be a good fit. He played for Vic Fangio. He knows the system. He's a veteran. He can come in and help out right away. Also be a mentor to a lot of the young guys that we have on that secondary. Now, for the center position, and I heard Coach Fangio say that Graham Glasgow, they prefer him to play guard. So I think that's where they're looking for him to play. Man, I don't know how I feel about a rookie coming in and playing that center position. Hopefully some of the guys that we have on the team right now, they can step up and play that position well. Patrick Morris, he's the guy that's the lead guy for that position right now. And if the coaches feel confident that he can do the job, maybe we don't go that route in the draft. But I think that's an area that needs to be addressed. Is going to be addressed. I'll prefer that it be in free agency versus the draft.
Now, we were talking a little bit before, I think, Steve, you mentioned it, about the guys that are going to be leaving. Adam Gotsis, for example, is a guy that's going to be gone. Didn't play a ton of snaps, but Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris, Will Parks, a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm curious, and I'll go to you first on this, Ben. Where do you think we're going to feel their loss the most? Like, is it this season? Is it something that you'll see early on where there's a bit of adjustment? Because specifically Will Parks, he seems like the guy, he's kind of a glue guy. It seems like we're gonna miss him the most early on in the season.
Well, we got a preview of what life is like without Will Parks a little bit last season during the injury. And the team still played well. Will was an energy guy, and he definitely brought energy when he was out there on the field. But, we saw the team hold their own and kind of have a next man up mentality. And we saw that a lot with the team at various positions last year, whether it was Purcell sliding in for Shelby kicking over on the D-line, whether it was when Draymond and DeMarcus came in, whether it was with the outside linebackers, Reed and Hollins, whether it was with the corner position with Devontae Harris and Devontae Bosby and all those guys that cycled through there. So I feel like this team has kind of a next man up mentality. I think they've embraced that. I think we'll probably see some communication issues early as guys get used to each other, but I think the defense will finish strong just like they did this year.
All right, when we come back, Alexis Perry is going to drop by. We'll talk running backs. Don't go anywhere.
Stay tuned. There's more Broncos Country Tonight ahead, right here on KTVD Channel 20.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight, joined, of course, by Alexis Perry from Broncos TV, DenverBroncos.com, and Broncos Beat. Alexis, how are you?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing great. I just found out Ben calls his place the Bat Cave, and I'm a little weird by it.
You know what's great about this? As is home with the cape and the cowl.
Oh, geez, Louise. I shouldn't be shocked by the things that Ben does, the things that he says, but every single day, continuously shocked.
I know. Speaking of superheroes, by the way, the Broncos did add one in Flash Gordon. At least that's the nickname. How about that for a transition? Melvin Gordon, here's what John Elway had to say about the addition of the former Chargers running back.
I think that obviously we had two good backs in Royce Freeman and Lindsey, Mr. Lindsey. We know that he is a guy that has had a great year for us. And I know there's people going, well, why do you need another horse? Well, when you have an opportunity for Melvin Gordon to come in here, we felt like it was an addition to the team. He's a guy that obviously has had a lot of success, in this league, scored a lot of touchdowns and has caught the football a ton. So we feel like with him, with Melvin as well as Phillip, that we got a great 1-2 punch, and we'll only get better in the backfield. So, ultimately we have to score more points this year. We've struggled on the offensive side the last 2-3 years, and so we've got to get better on that side. And I think Melvin will be one of those key pieces to help us get better.
Okay, so Alexis, I'll come to you first. What does this mean for the Broncos running back room? Started out with John Elway talking about Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, Mr. Lindsay, and then he shifted over to now the 1-2 punch is Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. So what are we expecting here as far as touches? What do you think is going to happen?
I think this is going to be very similar to what we saw with Phillip Lindsay last year with Royce Freeman. Instead, it might be more of Melvin Gordon in that bell cow running back position, and then maybe we'll see Phillip Lindsay in that number 2 RB position. But I really don't think Broncos country should be too worried about how much time they're going to see Phillip Lindsay on the field. I think it's going to be about the same, maybe even a little bit more, depending on how Pat Shurmur decides to use that run game. I just don't think people should be too concerned that Phillip Lindsay is all of a sudden not going to get any touches. Like Coach Fangio said on Wednesday, there's plenty of work to go around. There truly is. Especially with Phillip Lindsay and his size, I feel like it's important for somebody to come in and take some of that workload off of him in order to make sure that Phillip Lindsay can have a really long career. One Pro Bowl is not enough for Phillip Lindsay. We want to see 4 or 5 more, right?
Absolutely. Now, Benjamin, you've been a little bit more critical of this kind of contract. Ultimately, Melvin Gordon came down from what he was asking. So if the Broncos would have paid up for the full freight, I think we'd be having a little bit different conversation. Broncos would get a bargain, if you will, for him. But what do you think was so appealing about his abilities that made it so that the Broncos wanted him?
Well, I think he's got the ability to do it all. He can catch out of the backfield. He can run the ball. He can go out, run outside. He can run inside. He doesn't have a problem with that. Melvin Gordon, the player, I like a lot. Melvin Gordon, the contract is what I was leery of, especially when he opened the market asking for $12 million a year, which I'm never going to pay a running back. Fake general manager Benjamin Allbright is never paying a running back that kind of money. So, I think that my concern, which, Alexis just said, was actually pretty astute. But I think that my concern was, who are you pulling off the field to put Melvin Gordon on the field? Who are you taking off? You taking off Phil? Because if you're taking off Phil, it's taking off a weapon. Now, we have seen Pat Shurmur run some gun 2-back sets before. We saw Saquon, Wayne Gallman back there together. They had some packages designed for that. And I'd like to see both Melvin Gordon and Phil Lindsay on the field at the same time, too. I think that presents a matchup nightmare for defenses as well. So I'm interested to see the creative ways in which they use him. Will call me cautiously optimistic and slightly skeptical.
Now, Alexis, John said there at the end that they have this edict. We got to score more points. We got to be more prolific on offense. So does this fix that? What does this do to take steps forward to fixing that?
Yeah, I definitely think it does. We all know Melvin Gordon in his game. He has a nose for the end zone. He's incredibly versatile. Not only, is he's catching passes out of the backfield, and he's really great up against a stacked box. James Palmer said that on Broncos Beat the other day. He's really dangerous up against a stacked box in the red zone. Imagine, now all of a sudden these defenses have to account for Melvin Gordon on the field. So in the red zone, think of what that does for Cortland Sutton, what that does for Noah Fant, what that does for possibly Henry Ruggs. Fingers crossed, right, guys? So I think this does a lot for the Broncos offense, given the fact that when Melvin Gordon is on the field, you cannot overlook him. So I do think that we'll meet a lot more scoring for the Broncos offense.
But this also is something we should talk about, Ben, as it relates to the Broncos wanting to pass to set up the run. But Melvin Gordon is a great running back out of the backfield that can catch the ball. So are we still a team, do you believe this, in the Pat Shurmur offense is still a team that's going to be trying to pass to set up the run?
Well, absolutely. That's been a hallmark of Pat Shermer's offenses his entire coaching career. He's not going to radically change what it is that he does. He's tweaked it along the way to kind of get with the times, but he's still Pat Shermer at his core. He's still going to run what Pat Shermer runs. Yeah, I think, having Melvin Gordon back there, it gives you versatility. You can't camp on one or the other thing. We talk about concerns of Philip Lindsay. I think the real concern here suddenly becomes Royce Freeman. You were a guy who was drafted to be the short yardage back. You've been a guy who had the best hands out of the backfield of that running back group. Now you're relegated to third, probably going to be competing with a rookie in the draft. I think if you're Royce Freeman, now all of a sudden you're the one that's concerned in this running back room.
But you've said for a while, Benjamin, that Royce Freeman actually potentially could thrive in this offense. And the fact is, you do need at least 3 talented running backs. You don't need to have 3 starter caliber running backs on your roster, but you need to have 3 good running backs.
Well, yeah, you're going to have to distribute the workload. Alexis talked earlier about, being able to spell guys here or there, and I think Royce provides that. But I think that if you're Royce Freeman, you're a better fit for this offense. You're going to be running power gap. You're going to be running off left tackle, left guard. That's a better fit for what Royce does than trying to run that outside zone stuff where he lacks the wheels to hit that third gear. But it really comes down to opportunity at this point. If he's going to be sitting behind Gordon and sitting behind Lindsay, Royce is going to have to make the most of every opportunity he gets, or it's going to be pretty quick that we're trying to recall the days of Royce Freeman around here.
All right, thank you, Alexis Perry. Thank you to Steve Atwater. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight. Tune into Broncos TV every weeknight at 6:30 right here on KTVD Channel 20.